Give me a sec. Okay, we're recording.
All right, so thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon for our first EBCS seminar for this year. Let me briefly mention that, what this seminar is all about before we introduce our respected speakers. As you all know, the type of work that we do in EBCS, the data we collect, the organization we are in touch with on a daily basis require us to be on top of our game. And so to do that, we decided to bring people from the industry to talk to us about whatever they do, some of their needs, some of the data collections and data efforts and research efforts that they are involved in order to make sure that we are on top of our game and that we are exposed to the most recent technologies and the most recent activities that the industry is involved in. So during the fall semester, we will run this monthly event online because of the circumstances. But hopefully once people are okay with being in the presence of other people, we'll go back to campus and we'll run this event from our teaching lab or from one of our conference rooms on GSU campus. So, with that in mind, I'm very excited to introduce our first two speakers of the year, Sean and Andrew. And I'm not sure whether Sean and Andrew want us to disclose their last name or not. They were very secretive about everything, so I'm not gonna disclose their last name, even though we're recording this. Sean and Andrew, just, keep that in mind. Both our speakers' work is very relevant in the context of our darknet operation, so I'm very excited about this talk. Sean has been conducting intelligence operation for the last 12 years or so across multiple threat landscapes. He started out serving in the United States Armed Forces as an Army human intelligence operator, received an honorable discharge after 5 years, and then went back to Afghanistan, this time as a counterintelligence private contractor for the Department of Defense. He served there almost a year. Is that right, Sean?
I served actually for a little over a year as a CI analyst, and then I did just under a year doing more computer forensics on a counterintelligence team. Awesome.
And once he got back, he started working for Dell Technologies, doing cyber threat intelligence for them. And I'm sure that Sean will be speaking about this later on today. I'm not sure whether Sean wants me to disclose where he's working on, where he's working right now, so I will not. But I will just mention that starting June of 2020, John has become an affiliated researcher with our group, so we're excited to have him on board. Andrew is a cybersecurity consultant with over a decade of experience in all aspects of offensive and defensive cyber and intelligence collection, investigation, and analysis from the strategic level to tactical, both in the military and commercial sectors. He's currently a consultant and manager for a threat intelligence team, focusing on targeting, collecting, and analyzing intelligence from criminal threat actors. Significant work he was involved in includes identifying NATO and UN blacklisted corporations, smuggling contraband into Libya in 2020, as well as strategic analysis on Taiwanese semiconductor IP theft. His certification include an MBA from American University, certified incident handlers, certified ethical hackers, as well as project management professional. So with that in mind, I want to thank Sean and Andrew for taking the time to speaking to us today, and I look forward to your presentation. So Sean, if you want to take over the screen, the stage is yours.
Andrew's going to be presenting first.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Just real quick, everybody can see the screen?
Yep.
Outstanding. So today we're going to give a presentation on dark web exploration and intelligence collection. Our about us has pretty well been taken care of by David, and it was better than I think that we could write up ourselves. So if it's all right with Sean, I say we'll just keep moving.
Let's do it.
So here's today's agenda. What is the dark web and cyber threat intelligence? What are the economics of the dark web? We're going to go into a little bit of the history, OPSEC, open source intelligence, targeting and targeting frameworks, human intelligence, finding different kind of dark websites. We're going to do a deep dive into those specific sites. And then Sean's going to go through a few demos so we can all see the way to get on there, the way to access these things, and how to do it safely. So what is the dark web and underground forums? I don't think you will ever see a dark web presentation without this picture in some way, shape, or form, the blue iceberg. So at this point, I think everybody's very familiar with it. You got the surface web, the deep web, and the dark web. But more importantly, let's talk about who's where kind of on this. So right now, the ClearNet is things like Discord, Twitter, YouTube, Google, things like that. Predominantly, a current trend is English-speaking threat actors are doing all of their coordination on Discord on the ClearNet. So the FBI's got about 25 pages worth of Discord groups and things that are being done on there. You'll notice the OG users. There was a recent Twitter hack where they scammed everybody out of the Bitcoin by posting it as Elon Musk and things like that, all done via English speakers on Discord. Then you kind of go into things where you need a Tor browser. And you'll see that it's predominantly Russian-speaking threat actors, things like XSS and Exploit and Joker Stash, various other Tor underground forums on the dark web. China presents a little bit of a different problem. You see things being done on QQ, Jabber, a lot of chat messages, but you have the Chinese firewall, and it's hard for anyone outside of that firewall to get behind the firewall and then speak to Chinese threat actors. It's hard, but it's not impossible. That's just something you need to work around as far as using different onion routers and setups to do that. I heard everyone talking about code earlier, so I think you definitely have the technical skills in order to get to the other side of the firewall. So what is CTI? Personally, looking at this picture, you'll see strategic, tactical, and operational. In my opinion, strategic at the top is when you're talking to CEOs and C-level executives and trying to explain to them in a very non-technical way what's going on the threat landscape. Hey, we've got bad guys doing this. As we know, 2020 is the summer of ransomware. That's all you see every other day is a company paying a ransom or not paying a ransom. So on the top of this pyramid is strategic and how you conduct that with your senior stakeholders. The tactical and operational, I think you can flip-flop them either way. Depends, 6 1 half dozen the other. But all it comes down to is it's information and intelligence collected on threat actors in order to help you mitigate harmful events in the cyberspace area. Anything that's going to get you left of bang. So if you can stop a ransomware attack before it happens, or you can find a bad guy's command and control servers or setups or anything like that, all that applies. Goes through open source intelligence, social media intelligence, human intelligence, and technical intelligence. And I think you will all be at the front lines of determining this whole social media intelligence, because in my opinion, it's kind of going to fall into open source intelligence, but I think some of you will probably write the papers that make that happen or make the distinction between those two realms. So intelligence requirements, this kind of falls into more of a management thing. And since we're working from the top down here, you'll see your intelligence requirements are going to come from people who are tasking you with your research and collection. So for example, GSU's priority intelligence requirements might be things used for a specific experiment or research that you're running. It might be a darknet marketplace. It might be a specific kind of threat actor based by language or IP location or something like that. Law enforcement is going to use a few different priority intelligence requirements. For example, the FBI right now is very big on bulletproof hosting, which is just a term used for servers that are hosting things where they can't close them down easily. They have to go through leaps and bounds through the State Department to make that happen. Sean's going to touch on that later. But again, different intelligence requirements for different uses and different end users. The collection management framework, there's a whole industry design behind collection management framework. If anybody's familiar with Palantir or Analyst Notebook or anything like that, personally, I think you can do this on the free just by using Maltego and sharing the Maltego map around your team or whoever's using it. Collection management is all about how you take your resources and how you use them. Let's say there's 25 people on this call. We all, at the end of this, if one of our intelligence requirements is collect Russian threat actor intelligence, then we all don't need to go to Exploit and just sit there and collect the same stuff. So collection management framework kind of says, these two individuals are going to go over here, collect this. These two individuals are going to go over here and collect this. And then once everybody comes back, we'll put it all together and see what that picture forms. Dark web rules of engagement. As you start going out and doing your research, I understand you all have probably understood the rules of engagement at one point in time and what you can and cannot do on the dark web. But the Department of Justice put out a paper earlier this year that kind of gave some rules for the road for civilians on the dark web. If you're spending money out there, if you're buying information, you can buy your own information. You can buy information that's been authorized to you to get by a client or something like that. So it's not completely illegal for you to get databases, dump databases, to buy dump. However, if you give code to any threat actor, even as a trying to prove your bona fides, if they use that code for anything unlawful, then you're kind of on the hook for that. So that's something to keep in mind way before you start going down this rabbit hole. Just start writing out your rules of engagement, what you can and cannot do, just the rules for the road. Here's some quick things on the economy, the dark web. Now this is changing all the time, just like anything else. We've got the stock market, we've got the S&P, the Dow, and then we've got, the dark web. So cloned American Express cards with a PIN number of $35, huge on Joker Stash and things like that. Sean's going to cover that in depth here in a second. But one of the key things you look at are forged documents, which you saw coming in from China recently in Chicago. They found boxes of them. So high quality licenses are about $500, and then the low quality stuff that's not going to go through the new 50 state legal program that they have, less than $100 easily. Again, same kind of thing. You'll see malware. You get what you pay for. There's a lot of people that are going to try to scam you out of malware that they're going to say it's very custom. But if you go on something like, just if you just take a piece of the malware and Google it, you'll find that it's just a CVE that's already been reported for years. They changed a few words, maybe made something look new. It's not new, but they're going to try to take your money anyway. Also, be aware that when you buy malware samples, read the malware before you execute anything, because there's a lot of times that they'll plug their own backdoors in. So then it's going to dial out whenever you try to access that malware or recreate it in a lab, it's going to try to dial out to one of their servers so they can then remote into your computer and do whatever they want. Right now, I'm going to hand it over to Sean, who is going to go into a little bit of the history of some of the economics and dark web markets.
All right, so let's have some fun. Let's take a stroll down memory lane and look at the history of darknet marketplaces. I'm sure you've all heard of the famous Silk Road story. It launched in 2011, dubbing it the first modern darknet marketplace. The admin and site owner went by the name Dread Pirate Roberts, which may sound familiar if you've ever seen the movie Princess Bride. Law enforcement seized Silk Road in 2013, arrested Ross Albright, who was the Dread Pirate Roberts. Question on everyone's mind at the time was, are there more than one? Is there more than one Dread Pirate Roberts? The answer to that question in hindsight is yes. How do we know the answer to the question? Boom, Silk Road 2.0, launched shortly after Silk Road went down. It was run by other admins from Silk Road that claimed to be the other Dread Pirate Roberts. Evolution was another market that had gained popularity at the time that Silk Road 2 was seized. Evolution is most widely known as the first darknet marketplace that did an exit scam. What is an exit scam? An exit scam is when the marketplace admins steal all the members' cryptocurrency held in the marketplace's escrow system. Agora. So I really want to emphasize that graph that's in the top right-hand corner. So if you can squint and kind of look at those first three, looking at the graph, you'll see that Agora, Evolution, and Silk Road 2 had a combined market share of 72%. That graph was created before Silk Road 2 and Evolution market went down. Now, once Silk Road 2 and Evolution went down, Agora officially became the largest marketplace. However, Agora's title of being the largest marketplace in the dark web did not last long. Shortly after Evolution shut down, Agora shut down. Now, a marketplace that needs no introduction, Alphabay. So Alphabay enters the scene in 2014 and started gaining popularity around the same time all these other marketplaces went down. Now, let's think about the timeline here. Alphabay was launched in 2014 and had started gaining in popularity. Silk Road 2, which had 27% of the market share, was seized in 2014. Evolution, which had 18% of the market share, did an exit scam in 2015. Agora then became the largest marketplace and saw their market share soar from 27% to nearly 70%. But then Agora went down in 2015, which left that 70% of market share wide open. Not only that, but the members of these marketplaces were essentially homeless and looking for, a new marketplace, a new home to buy and sell their illicit items. That home became AlphaBay. In less than 12 months, the AlphaBay user count rose from 200,000 users to 400,000 users. You could call this being in the right place at the right time, and AlphaBay was then crowned as the largest darknet marketplace. Now, around that same time, a much smaller marketplace known as Hansa was gaining popularity in Europe, and with time, Hansa became the second largest marketplace. Now, Operation Bayonet, what was it? To keep the answer short, it was a collaborative operation by German, Dutch, and US law enforcement agencies. The operation was responsible for taking down two of the most popular darknet marketplaces, Hansa and AlphaBay. Fun fact, the FBI named it Operation Bayonet because they wanted to pierce the darknet market, AlphaBay, but it actually goes deeper than that because the Bay and Bayonet is for AlphaBay, and the net and Bayonet was for darknet. So, Operation Bayonet Phase 1. Let me set the scene for everyone listening. The FBI had informed the German and Dutch authorities that they were going to seize AlphaBay and arrest the site owner who was living in Thailand at the time. The German and Dutch authorities said, whoa, hold on, and told the FBI that they were working on their own operation and were about to make an arrest on the Hansa market admins and take over Hansa's servers. They all then agreed that the FBI would wait until the German and Dutch authorities took control of the Hansa site before the FBI takes AlphaBay down. So the German and Dutch arrested the Hansa admins and took control of the marketplace's servers, but they did it quietly because they didn't want any of the buyers and the sellers of the Hansa marketplace to realize that it was now being monitored by law enforcement. The Dutch now had full admin control of the Hansa marketplace, which allowed them to collect a massive amount of evidence on buyers and sellers' activity within the Hansa site. Now that the German and Dutch authorities were set, the FBI was able to take Operation Bayonet to Phase 2 and arrested the site owner, Alexander Kazaz, in Thailand. When the FBI took down AlphaBay, it resulted in exactly what the Dutch authorities had planned on. Numerous AlphaBay users flocked to Hansa market. The Dutch set their trap, and the AlphaBay users took the bait. Operation Phase 3, they had full admin control of Hansa, which allowed the authorities to collect a massive amount of evidence on all the buyers and sellers' activity. And when they decided they had enough evidence, they took Hansa down. And as you can see in the screenshot in the top right-hand corner, it shows some of the personas of some of the sellers that were arrested as a result of Operation Bayonet. So, was there less criminal activity now that these sites were seized by authorities? Yes and no. No, because criminals migrated to Wall Street and Dream Market literally right after AlphaBay and Hansa were taken down. Yes, because there hasn't since been a drug-focused marketplace as big as AlphaBay since the takedown. Now you'll notice I emphasized on drug-focused marketplace. You'll see why in a minute. Now, looking at the graph, you'll see I listed the marketplaces Silk Road, AlphaBay, Hansa, and Dream Market by the number of advertised listings. I also included Empire Market, which is currently the largest drug-focused marketplace today, but not of all time. That title still belongs to AlphaBay. So, why did I create this graph? Was it because it kind of looks cool to display the size of these marketplaces side by side? No. I wanted to display this so everyone could get an idea of how much bigger AlphaBay was in size to these marketplaces to then crush your idea of AlphaBay by showing you this. This is a graph of financial fraud and RDP marketplaces compared to AlphaBay in size. As you can see, or more so barely see, AlphaBay is that teeny tiny little orange sliver there on the left. BlackPass is the one to the right of AlphaBay, which has more than 11 million financial fraud and RDP listings for sale. JokerStash is probably the most popular of the three other marketplaces, mostly because it's constantly in the news for breaking its own record for uploading the largest amount of breached credit cards at a time. Just earlier this year, they uploaded 30 million credit cards into the marketplace with what was called the Wawa breach. Last but not least, the Slit marketplace, which is managed by Russian-speaking admins and has the highest number of listings with just over 52 million. Slit marketplace sells RDP access, point-of-sale systems, financial fraud data, fulls, and so much more in that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Andrew now.
Awesome. Sounds great. Let's talk about operational security, OPSEC. Essentially what OPSEC is and why it matters is there's sites like DocSpin out there where if you look on the screen right now, you'll see that anyone can outsource uncovering your personal information if you make them angry enough. So for example, you see here that there was someone who got beat up in Portland recently at a protest. Then they doxed this person because he was on a YouTube video, and then his relatives were exposed, his home addresses were exposed, everything about him was exposed. This was all done in about 15 minutes, and there's people online that do this freely just because they have nothing else to do and they want to do some OSINT investigation work. So 134 views and 5 comments, and everything about this individual is now out there. So as investigators or researchers or just general people trying to live our day-to-day lives, we need to avoid that as much as possible. So what is OPSEC? Operational security is a process that identifies critical information to determine if friendly actions can be observed by enemy intelligence. Operational security and personal security kind of get tied together pretty easily. But again, keeping your information private and everything that is about you is somehow fake, made up, or used in a proxy manner on the dark web. You don't want to be who you really are. Nobody wants their information on the dark web out there or in general social media use. So then how do we do this? What's the threat model? So what information of mine is out there? What happens if I'm doxxed? Specifically for dark web and dark web research, you'll see that there's a lot of different who's who in the zoo out there. You've got different intelligence organizations, reporters, threat researchers, criminal actors that are also private companies in the Ukraine and Russia and things like that. So they have a dual role here. And you'll see that they want to find out as much about you as they can because they think like James Bond and think like the bad guy, which is exactly how you need to think. This is the one opportunity you have to think like a bad person or a threat actor, and there will be no consequences other than your own personal security being okay. So what are hackers going to try to do to uncover your data? One, as soon as you start interacting with these folks, they're going to start asking you questions and probing questions about you, and you need to be prepared to answer them. There's only one real way to deal with this. It's kind of a trial by error thing. So you need to take precautions beforehand. One of the things they try to do is they try to send you phishing links disguised as data, or they say, hey, check out this new dump, this, that, or the other. And when you check that out, it's a bit.ly link that exposes all of your IP and your system information to them, from which point they can determine where you are and what you're browsing. So they'll try to send you links up front and say, oh, you like that, check this out. There's different ways to run those links to ground, things like VirusTotal, or just generally running those links through in a lab environment or in a very sanitized, air-gapped lab environment, rather. So then they're going to start looking at times when you post. There was a lot of breaches that were found out because people were posting on Chinese 9 to 5 hours, which are 12-hour days, 9 to 9, Monday through Saturday. And they were found out that way because they were only posting during those times. They're going to use username and email correlation with previous breach data on the ClearNet, which things like Have I Been Pwned and other sites like that. SpyCloud's a great example. All of the information's been out there and it's been released, and maybe a password's been reused. They'll use that against you because a lot of threat actors all the time, they wind up using Twitter, and then their Twitter alias is the same as their dark web alias because they want to keep that notoriety because they have some ego riding on it. Then they're going to try to ask you some seemingly innocuous questions. Good example. Yeah, I really like using Brave for browsing Tor. Oh yeah, me too. It's all I use. And then they know they've got your browser fingerprinted and they can, look for CVEs directly related to that browser. If they want to try to do cross-site scripting or something like that, they can get a beef hook because they've targeted your browser specifically. Things like that. So how are you going to minimize your risk? Again, you're going to think like a spy or a criminal. You're going to 100% tell no one anything that's real out here. Most scrapers are very loud, so you're going to use proxies, and even those proxies for your scrapers are going to have pseudonyms. Obviously, you're going to use good patch management. You're not going to send passwords and usernames in emails and things like that. Just, good practices about privacy. I think maybe a better word for OPSEC would just be general privacy. Then we're going to talk about VMs. So always use a VM or some form of virtual machine. There's different ways like hypervisors and things like that. But the way to think of a VM is basically a computer inside of a computer. For example, if you run a MacBook and you install a VM from VMware on there, or Kali Linux VM or something like that, all they're going to see is that you're running a VM from VMware. They're not going to see that you're running it on a MacBook or anything related to your host operating system. So keep the idea of using a VM. And on that VM, you're going to have 2 VPNs as the minimum. One's going to be a VPN on your computer. In that example, it would be a Mac. And the other one's going to be a VPN that is Tor, essentially. And Tor has its ups and downs, but for what you're doing, it's going to work. Again, to hit on VMs and virtual machines, if you go to Trace Labs or Intel Techniques, Buscador, they make pre-made VMs for open source intelligence and dark web related research, or you can use your own Kali Linux style VM. It's really super simple. Any way we can help, we will. And then let's talk open source intelligence. So you could teach entire classes on open source intelligence, but I think the best way to look at OSINT is it's very simple to do. It's essentially advanced Google dorking. And there are a lot of resources out there. As long as you know where the resources are, they keep updating and they update themselves. And as long as you stay up to date with the newest, coolest resources and the newest, coolest databases and APIs, then you'll be fine. They're very easy to use, very user-friendly. The one-stop shop for everything right now is the OSINT framework. So just osintframework.com. All the things are listed here. We'll give you these slides so you can check out all these links as well. But OSINT is ever evolving. It's anything that you can find on the web, open source intelligence, anything that's not classified that you can find. Intel Techniques is another great site, and Jake Krepp's OSINT tools for the dark web has a lot of automated scrapers on there for small scale things, not large scale scrapers, but small scale things. Digital evidence collection tools. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with this already. Hunchly, which is a browser plugin that is designed to collect all the evidence you need and then be used in court later on, or however you deem fit to use it. But everything you do, it logs as you go through the sites, records everything, including screenshots, metadata tags, HTML tags, Java objects, things like that. It records everything and then assigns a unique hash to each artifact. So when you go to court, you can have a good chain of custody. Say, hey, we grabbed this at X date, X time. This is all the metadata details behind it. And also they come out with a daily list of dark websites that they crawl for free. It's not a filtered list. It's 100% whatever they have for the day. So you could find some really bad stuff on there that you don't need to be clicking on. However, it is a free and available tool that you can use. Also, they give free licenses for educational institutions. So let's talk a little bit about link analysis. Right here on the screen, you'll see an investigation that Sean and I were working on about 4 or 5 months ago. There was a threat actor trying to sell us drugs early on in the COVID epidemic. And he, like everybody else, he had his miracle cure. So we talked to him for a little bit. We got him to give up his Bitcoin wallet ID. We said we were going to send him some money. We never sent him any money, but we got the wallet ID, which we then used to pivot off of and find through some various techniques that we used. One, the myth that Bitcoin it can't be tracked is 100% a total myth, because Bitcoin can be tracked and it's very easy to do it. So after we got his Bitcoin wallet ID, we then saw every other transfer of Bitcoin or other purchase he'd made. And we even found other people's Bitcoin wallets on the other ends of those nodes. But we actually had access to a database through a liaison that we were working with. They gave us the access to his database, which we searched the dark web screen name that we had, and it came back that he'd used that screen name on the ClearNet before, which then, as you can see, gave us his cell phone number, his Facebook page, his real name, and a few other things. He was a UK resident, so we passed it off to the police over there, and they took that for action. So again, linking threat actors. The cryptocurrency myth is busted. Multigo has transforms, and blockchain.com has transforms that you can start tracking the Bitcoin. And as long as you have enough resources for the big data piece of it, you can narrow down where it ends up and who that links to on the other end, just through open source intelligence, really, and talking to people on the dark web. Same usernames on the dark web as the ClearNet, like I said earlier. And again, ClearNet open source intelligence is a lot easier. So anytime you can link those two, it's a hole in one. So the initial access broker is something that I think would be very interesting that you might be able to try at some point in time. Just understand there's a lot of risk involved, and you shouldn't take this up. It's not a very easy undertaking. But with that said, the initial access broker is something bad guys normally do where, let's say they find RDP access on Shodan or something like that, and they don't have the infrastructure to be ransomware actors and hold people's systems hostage, and they just don't want that kind of risk. So what they do is they sell this. They say, hey, I have access to a network with 30 computers, and I don't know what's on it, but I have access to it, and I'll sell it to you for X amount of money. Then once they sell that access, the ransomware actors go in and do the hard work and then have to, negotiate and get the money. But what an easy way to do for an offensive cyber operation for research or however you want to, whatever you want to call it, you pretend to be an initial access broker. You set up a honeypot of a server and maybe 15 computers, and you make it look like a small company's network. And then you say, hey, I've got this XYZ network and I want to sell it for whatever. They confirm that it exists on Shodan.io or something like that. And then you let the attackers come to you. You literally just watch as they attack your systems. You get all the information. You get all the pings that come in and out, and you'll see their command and control servers that they're linked to and what countries they're in and things like that. And then from there, you have enough evidence to start working backwards and take down that cell or that group. Just something to think about. There's a lot more ways to do it. There's a lot more detail that needs to be involved with that, but it's something to think about in the future. Maltego, case management software, great way to manage and perform link analysis and kind of see all the connections and how they work. Again, it's kind of like Palantir or IBM's Analyst Notebooks, but you literally just click and drop things, and then you can make it all the links come together and see who's talking to who and for what reasons. It's actually very simple to use. They have a lot of transforms. There's a free version, and that free version can do all the Bitcoin tracking automatically for you. Also, this is something that you can use collaboratively with your team. Up to probably 100 people, I think, can share one Maltego graph. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that. Another hit on targeting and blockchain analysis. Whenever you're talking to these threat actors, make sure you find a way to get their Bitcoin and Monero wallet ID just so you can get the data and plug it into your big data set. Because at some point, this will come back around and you'll be like, oh, okay, this is the same Bitcoin wallet ID or the same Bitcoin that was used in X transaction that resulted in X attack or X compromise. And it's the same thing as anything else, right? In finance, you follow the money to find out where the bad guys are putting their money or the methods they're using to move their money. Bitcoin and the dark web go hand in hand, and it's the same thing. You just follow the money. So make sure as much as you can to get the Bitcoin wallet ID and the Monero wallet ID. Now let's talk about MITRE pre-attack. So MITRE pre-attack, the MITRE attack framework is incredibly useful, and it's something you need to learn now because I'm sure you already know it, but it's just one of those things that it's a force multiplier, and it's going to only increase in the future, the reliability on this. But the MITRE pre-attack side is essentially a tactical level way to either stop the bad guys or think like the bad guys and do what the bad guys are doing. So you'll see things like technical information gathering, persona development, building your capabilities. If you look at the MITRE pre-attack framework, you could essentially follow this by the numbers to set up your own research ability on the dark web and act like a threat actor. You can also use this to stop them, and in things like setting up honeypots and things like that, you can use this to funnel them down the road that you want them to go. But let's say if MITRE pre-attack is the tactical level framework, then the attack the network model would be more of a strategic level framework. Shameless plug, this is something that Sean and I both adapted from the military. It was used by the Joint Staff to target lethal aid and ID networks in the global war on terror. It's another option where you can tell the story of these threat actor groups, and you can do it in a less technical way. So you can make it more of a narrative and less of a ones and zeros hashes. They used XYZ malware. They used Cobalt Strike C2 nodes, et cetera, et cetera. This is more of this is their center of gravity. This is what they like to do. These are their motives, their operations, things like that. So you'll see their freedom of movement, their structure, organization, the people, the popular support. Are they hacktivists? Are they just ransomware actors? Are they ransomware actors who are registered as companies in other countries? their logistics network, C2 nodes, communications, things like that. So it just allows you to build a better laydown that you can explain to the non-technical side of the house. Now I'm going to pass it off to Sean, who's going to explain what is human intelligence.
Awesome. So what is human? A very simple definition of human intelligence is the collection of intelligence from a human. So here's a better question. How do we leverage human in underground forums? Let me answer the question by showing you. But first, let me give you a little backstory. So there are multiple ransomware groups who just in the last 8 months have been launching their own leak sites. They use these leak sites as sort of a double extortion method. This tactic first starts with breaching an organization and then stealing their data. Then the ransomware group encrypts all of the organization's systems so that the organization is paralyzed and that they can't use any of their computers. Ransomware typically comes with a ransom note with details on how much Bitcoin the organization has to pay for the ransomware group to unencrypt their systems. The stolen data is then used as a form of blackmail, and that the ransomware groups will threaten to leak the data on their name and shame data leak sites. As of today, and just in the past week, there's been 3 more, but as of today, there have been 18 ransomware groups who have adopted this method and launched their own leak sites for shaming their victims who don't pay up. What does any of this have to do with human intelligence? So I'm getting to that now. So on your screen, you'll see an advertisement for the Avedon ransomware as a service that was posted in the Russian-speaking underground forum Exploit back in June. One of my collection requirements at the time was to identify any new ransomware groups that adopt this naming and shaming tactic. Boom, human. That's the direct approach. After communicating with the threat actor Avedon in June, I was able to confirm that they were planning to launch their own leak site. Boom, Avedon ransomware launches their naming and shaming data leak site for extorting their victims. I was able to confirm this with the actual threat actor 2 months before they launched their leak site. And here's a screenshot I took of the actual Avedon ransomware leak site. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that they have 2 victims whose data has already been leaked on the site. Their most recent victim is listed at the top. This was a success from a human intelligence collection perspective because we now have confirmation that the intelligence from that threat actor was true. So, human operations. How does one collect human intelligence? Well, you need to research on who your target source is. What are their motivations, their experience levels, their skill sets, likes, dislikes, any background context that you can gather passively prior to engaging with your source. You also can't do anything on the collection side until you have your collection requirements from leadership. The best analogy I can think of at the moment for engaging with a threat actor without any intelligence requirements is going into a sword fight blindfolded. Without these collection requirements, the intelligence collector has no idea what they should be collecting, or they're just collecting things that don't matter to the organization. So, how do you collect intelligence from highly capable threat actors in underground forums? Well, you need to have access, credibility, and you need to make sure you do so under a persona or a pseudonym through accounts that are known as sock puppets. What is a sock puppet? A sock puppet is an online persona that is created and maintained by the intelligence collector so that they can remain anonymous when collecting intelligence online. You'll want to make sure that your sock puppet has a backstory, and even going so far as to write down your sock puppet's likes, dislikes, age, country of origin, where your persona went to school, anything else that could come up in conversation with a threat actor. Going this in depth with your sock puppet's backstory might sound like overkill, but it helps ensure that you're always staying consistent with who your sock puppet is and never accidentally leaking your own OPSEC to a threat actor. Depending on what your collection requirements are, you may want to try and reveal your sources behind the mask is. This is typically useful information that law enforcement can use as evidence, but just from a threat intelligence perspective, it can be useful in attribution. So, human intelligence techniques. I want to try and keep these slides short since this course is more about dark web exploration than it is about human intelligence collection. I think it's important to mention approaches, elicitation techniques, social engineering. if you ever want to actively collect intelligence from human sources on the dark web. So these are just some very basic human intelligence collection approaches that are straight out of the Human Collector's Handbook. You may have heard of a few of these, or at least understand what some of them are. We have pride and ego up and down, Mutt and Jeff approach, we know all approach, we know nothing approach, change of scenery approach, emotional hate and love approach, incentive, direct, mirroring. All these are approaches that can be used in human intelligence collection. I pick these ones because they're the easiest applied to cyberspace. So pride and ego up. I think it's pretty easy to decrypt just what this approach is used for. You make your source feel good and build their ego up in order to gain more valuable intelligence. Pride and ego down, obviously the opposite of pride and ego up. If you sense that your source responds in a positive way to this approach and that they provide you with more valuable intelligence, then you leverage the P&E down approach. You may not have heard of Mutt and Jeff, but I would bet $100 that you've heard of good cop, bad cop. This approach applied in cyberspace is a bit more difficult to do, but essentially the approach is one intelligence collector creates an environment of fear or dislike with the source, while the other collector makes the source feel safe, warm and fuzzy, creates a safe space for the source to share intelligence. We know all approach can be used to trick your source into thinking you actually know the intelligence, or at least just enough of it, so they let their guard down and start providing that intelligence with even more context. We know nothing is useful because underneath everything, everyone just wants to teach and share their experiences with others. And if you couple this approach with a pride and ego up approach, you can get your source talking for days. It can also be applied in cyberspace as long as you have a sock puppet that has a backstory that fits this approach. For example, let's say I have 4 sock puppets that I'm using. One sock puppet is a South American mid-level hacktivist who has experience with DDoS attacks. Another puppet is a Russian-speaking high-level financial fraud data broker. Another is a low-level script kiddie whose backstory is they're just getting started into hacking. And your 4th sock puppet is an established Turkish citizen with radical extremist views with access to the Turk hack team. Which of these 4 sock puppets am I going to use? Which one is more suited for the we know nothing approach? The script kiddie sock puppet, since they're just getting started in the hacking scene and it fits their backstory to be asking dumb questions. Now, obviously we can't take these threat actors on vacation, but I want to drive the point home that you need to make your source feel comfortable if your goal is for them to share details about their cyber criminal operations. Most of the more sophisticated cyber criminals will know not to reveal operational details in a public forum thread, and some won't even discuss this information in a forum private message. This means you need to know some of the basic external communication platforms that these threat actors prefer to use. Many of these different communication platforms are dependent on your source, but I can tell you what's most common. So most Russian-speaking sources lean towards Jabber, XMPP, ICQ, and in some cases Telegram, outside of the forums. But most Middle Eastern cyber terrorist or extremist groups stand up disposable Twitter accounts to publish their recruitment links to their private Telegram channels. Most Asian-speaking sources, as Andrew said, lean towards QQ. Most English-speaking sources lean towards Telegram, Discord, and Keybase, really depending on the type of criminal activity that they do. Typically, a change of scenery approach can be used by researching the threat actor's forum profile and public threads to see if they list a Telegram, Jabber, or ICQ account. If they have a Jabber account, list it. If they do have one, then you can send them a private message on the forum that you'll be contacting them on Jabber about an advertisement that they posted about. Once you've started an OTR session, which stands for off the record, and means that the chat is encrypted, you have successfully changed the scenery to one that is more suitable to your source. So an emotional hate approach can be used if you identify that your source has a hatred for a specific country, forum member, or race. You only want to use this approach if you're actually gaining intelligence from exploiting your source's hate. An example I like to use for this approach, if you've ever seen the movie The Black Klansman, which is a great movie based on a true story about how a Black police officer in the 1970s infiltrated the KKK. The movie is a prime example of how a Black detective and their Jewish partner were able to exploit the KKK's hate and gain actionable intelligence to prevent a domestic terror event, and eventually were able to take the cell down altogether. I won't touch on this approach for too long. It's fairly obvious. The love approach is the exact opposite of the emotional hate approach, and that, you know, you're exploiting whatever it is that the source loves, and if it helps you gain intelligence from the source. The incentive approach is probably the easiest approach to use in underground forums and marketplaces. There can be multiple ways to apply this approach, but the most common in these networks is money. Acting like an interested buyer who's just doing a little bit of window shopping can actually get you pretty far in these forums, because most of these threat actors are financially motivated. However, if you window shop for too long under one sock puppet account, your persona can gain negative reputation as a lurker who never buys or contributes to the forum or its members, which, you know, will then destroy your sock puppet's credibility, and you'll likely not ever be able to gain intelligence using that persona. The direct approach, pretty straightforward. I showed you an example of the direct approach with my conversation with the Abaddon ransomware developer. Just flat out asked him. The only other thing I want to say about this approach is be careful who you use it on. Not all threat actors will respond to this approach the same. You know, typically, if you ask too many direct questions to a specific threat actor that doesn't take kindly to it, you might get labeled a Fed, and, you know, they warn all of their other buddies within the forum. Mirroring, simply mimicking what the source does and says to make them feel comfortable sharing information with you. Elicitation. So when I first learned what elicitation was, I literally used it everywhere I went. Elicitation is interactive listening while steering the conversation in a certain direction to get to your goal without the source being aware of what your goal is. This is a technique that takes skill, and with any form of tradecraft, you need practice, practice, practice. An example of practicing elicitation, and I dare some of you to do this, walk into a Ford dealership with the goal of having the salesman tell you not to buy a Ford and to tell you where the nearest Chevy dealership is. See how long you end up talking to that salesman for. Make them work hard, hard hours, quoting you all the specs and bringing the price down and talking to their manager, while you just keep quoting Chevy prices and specs and why you don't think Ford is the right one for you. Eventually, depending on how many buttons you push with that salesman, they'll realize they're not going to win and will just tell you, maybe you should just go with the Chevy. Then ask the question that you wanted the answer to all along: where is the nearest Chevy dealership? Now, it's likely that they would have given this information to you in the very beginning, but it's good practice from a human collector standpoint to battle it out with the salesman. What is social engineering? How can it be used in human operations? So, social engineering is very similar to elicitation in that it's used to manipulate your source into divulging information that can be used for malicious purposes. How can this be used in human? Well, you want to identify things about the source that can help you get them to reveal the information. So for this example, we're using a grocery store as our scene, and we're identifying a target as a male wearing a wedding ring, is overweight, but buying healthy foods. We know that their bank account password hint is dog's name. We're trying to get into the bank account. We're trying to log in, but we need the dog's name. So you can leverage hatred of eating healthy foods, love of soccer, maybe even mixed in with a relatable comment to make the source feel comfortable in the initial conversation starter. So like a leading question using the direct approach would be, oh, your wife making you eat healthy too, huh? Even though you are a complete stranger with a hidden motive, your target source is likely to let their guard down and engage in the conversation. Now you can move on to steering the conversation, elicitation, in the direction that you want it to go, so you can manipulate your source into revealing the name of their dog. All right, what everybody came here for. How to find new dark web sources. You have search engines, wikis, directories, stat sites, pay sites. In some cases, forum members will even post new dark websites that they recommend. Two key takeaways that I want you all to walk away from this with is going down rabbit holes can be extremely useful in finding new dark web sources. However, You must always be aware that child pornography sites and forums exist in the dark web, and you must stay far away from these. If you accidentally click on one of these sites and any trace of CP on it, then you need to immediately leave the site, notify your leadership, and notify law enforcement. Search engines, pretty self-explanatory. There's many Tor-based search engines out there, and most of them crawl different parts of the dark web. So, this means that if I search the word forum in EMEA, which is at the left, I will get something completely different than if I search forum in Torch, or if I search the word forum in Candle, I'm going to get completely different results. Tor marketplace search engines essentially crawl the many different marketplaces that are on the dark web. However, similar to the other search engines that I mentioned in the previous slide, these crawl different types of marketplaces. So if you use Mega Search, which is the one on the left, you'll notice that when you search it, the results come back as predominantly Russian-speaking financial fraud marketplaces. Whereas if I search the other two, Recon and Kilos, which is in the middle, and the one on the right, I'll get mostly English-speaking drug and other multi-purpose marketplaces. Wikis, probably the most useful sources for finding new dark websites, because they're essentially just a collection of someone's categorized sites that they put together. You can find all kinds of wikis just by using search engines and typing in wiki or hidden wiki or dark web wiki or Tor wiki. But typically these are put together and they're labeled, in nice categories. So you can kind of just pick and choose what you want to go through. And then you've got directories, which is basically the same thing as wikis, except they're much more organized and they'll take you directly to the site. And a lot of times they'll even have traffic history and different kinds of information. And they're just a lot more organized. Stat sites. So what stat sites do is they measure the traffic going to and from forums, marketplaces, and other sites over Tor. So these can be useful because some stat sites, for example, onion.live, they even go as far as to rank based on how much traffic goes by the site. So, as you see in the screenshot, Empire Market is at the top. Pay sites. So pay sites like DeepPay, StockSpin, and DeepLink, these can be used for all kinds of things, but more specifically, DeepLink is a spin-off of DeepPaste that always posts new Tor sites and things like that. So if you want to search for a specific kind of site, if you're looking for forums, you can search in where it's the one on the right. You can search in that search bar for forums, and it'll populate all of the most recent forums that pop up. All right, let's talk about the various underground forums you'll encounter on the dark web. You have multi-purpose forums such as Dread, which was actually a shout out to, the name was actually a shout out to Silk Road's admin, the Dread Pirate Roberts. The admin who started Dread and Recon is actually the same admin who started Empire Marketplace. Financial fraud forums, also known as carding forums. The top left screenshot is of the Russian-speaking forum Pirate Ship, and at the bottom is a screenshot of the Russian-speaking Omerta, which is actually run by the same admins who started Joker Stash, which is one of the largest financial fraud marketplaces in existence. The site on the right is the English-speaking carding forum Altanin, which is run by the same admins who started a dark web forum called DWF, which was launched earlier this year. Message board forums and chat sites. So these are where you'll find a mixture of topics ranging from misinformation, hate speech, and all kinds of other topics that don't really apply to this presentation. So the New Zealand domestic terrorist who attacked a mosque on Facebook Live was discovered talking about their plans on 4chan, which was later shut down after that incident. So shortly after 4chan went down, the site relaunched under the name 8kun, which happened to be over Tor. Also, you'll notice InChan, which is another messaging board. So, hacking, cracking, data leaking forums. The most popular English-speaking underground forum that focuses on hacking, cracking, and leaking databases is, of course, RAID forums. On any given day, you might find the sale or leak of a government database or a large automotive manufacturing company, you know, all kinds of different organization databases. I'll show you a bit what it looks like in real time at the end. Exploit and XSS, two extremely active Russian-speaking underground forums that are most widely known for buying, selling, auctioning a breached company's network access, malware and other exploits, ransomware as a service, ransomware source code. If you look at the example at the top left, you'll see a threat actor boasting about how their coronavirus phishing map and malware loader made it into a Forbes article. So if anybody's heard of that coronavirus phishing map, that was the threat actor who was responsible. Defacing forums. So defacing forums and sites are mostly used by lower level cyber criminals and hacktivists. In some cases, we've even seen, very rarely, we've seen APT activity, advanced persistent threat activity, in these kinds of sites. Very, very rare, but it's happened. So let's dive into marketplaces. As you can see, there are also, just like the forums, many different categories of marketplaces in the underground. There's drug-focused, RDP markets, carding marketplaces, bot and log markets, DDoS markets, auctions, single-purpose and malware marketplaces, and probably more than what's listed right here. So, drug and multi-purpose fraud marketplaces. These are the most common and publicly known marketplaces because of what they sell. What they're most known for is the sale of drugs, but they also sell things like forged documents, databases, passports, account login information, and other illicit items. Empire Marketplace was actually in the news recently, and for those of you who haven't heard, Empire Marketplace has been down for the past 5 days. Members are claiming that they can't access their Bitcoin, and that's in the Empire Marketplace escrow. And they also claim that the Empire admin 7 is running an exit scam, whereas the site owner and admin, who goes by the name 7, claims that it was a DDoS attack. Well, I mean, he said this 3 days ago, and it's been 5 days since it's gone down. We'll likely see what happens in the next 2 to 3 days. Financial fraud marketplaces, such as Joker Stash, they sell credit cards and other carding information, financial fraud data that is typically stolen from a breach. In some cases, these marketplaces, such as BlackPass, which is the one on the right, they sell fulls and point of sale systems. RDP marketplaces sell remote access to computer systems so that an adversary can use that for a multi-stage targeted attack. In this example, you see the most recent, and I say most recent, but it's a more popular marketplace, but the most recent RDP marketplace, UAS, but I want to talk about Exdetic just because of what Exdetic was. It's not listed there, but it's because it doesn't exist anymore. But Exdetic was a Ukrainian-speaking RDP forum and marketplace. It became the largest and most widely used RDP-focused marketplace in existence. It's since been taken down because it was seized by law enforcement. Bot and account log marketplaces, such as Genesis Marketplace, sell bots that contain fingerprinted browser data that includes account login information. This kind of data is typically obtained through the use of information stealing malware. So if an adversary or threat actor wanted to buy an information stealing malware from the forum Exploit or XSS and then use it to steal browser fingerprinted data, they could then take it and repackage it into bots or account logs and sell it in a marketplace like Genesis. Web shell marketplaces such as Magbo, which is the one on the left, advertise the sale of website and servers that have been exploited through a web shell, whereas marketplaces like Top Shelf, the one on the right, sell the actual web shell exploits. DDoS marketplaces sell stressor services which allow you to DDoS anyone. Literally anyone can go on here, and if you have an IP address or you just want to mess with somebody, you can go on here and purchase their service and just plug and play. Put in the IP address or the IP range that you want to stress, and then you're instantly DDoSing someone. Malware and exploit marketplaces sell things such as, you guessed it, malware source code, ransomware as a service, other kinds of exploits. Single vendor marketplaces, they're standalone Tor sites normally associated with scams, such as this one. Single vendor marketplaces typically don't stay online for very long. They launch a site for a scam, and once the scam is successful, they take the site down and move to the next one. Auction marketplaces sell databases in a more auction style format. The REvil ransomware group, which their leak site is the one on the right, they recently launched an auction section that was built into their leak site. The story as to why is actually pretty interesting. A guarantor from the Russian-speaking forum Zeloy stole $170,000 from the REvil ransomware member that goes by the name Unknown, UNKN, which created distrust in the forum's escrow system. So the REvil member started auctioning data through the Exchange of Information, which is the site on the left. Some of the more famous data that they auctioned was the Trump data that was stolen from a celebrity law firm earlier this year. Then the REvil group launched their own auction site that was built into the Happy Blog leak site, which again is the one on the right. Bulletproof hosting. What is it? So it's essentially nefarious hosting providers that look the other way while other cyber criminals launch their websites and command and control C2 domains through the hosting service. You can fix anything with flex tape. So let's take a look at the different leak sites. You got leak repositories and ransomware data leak sites. The most publicly known leak site was, of course, WikiLeaks. But recently this year, another site with the same purpose of WikiLeaks, and it's actually been around for a while, data dumped the largest leak of law enforcement agency data that has ever been leaked. So this leak was called BlueLeaks, and you may have heard of it if any of you are on Twitter or read security news or anything like that. But the site itself is called DDoS or Distributed Denial of Secrets. So ransomware leak sites have become ever more popular in the year 2020 due to the level of success the ransomware groups have had in getting the victims to pay the ransom, because it's a double extortion method. If you look at the one on the left, that's Clop Ransomware's leak site. If you look at the one in the middle, that's Maze Ransomware leak site, who has the most victims out of all the 18 ransomware groups that have leak sites. And the one on the right, Corporate Leaks, is Nephilim Ransomware. So, NetWalker case study. NetWalker ransomware. So I chose NetWalker because I thought of all the different ransomware groups, this one is the one that's most relevant to this presentation for GSU students and faculty, mostly because of the increase in targeting in universities. So some of these universities include Michigan State University, Austin College, and one that was in the news just this week was University of Utah. So University of Utah, and this is what the shout out to that meme down there, University of Utah paid nearly $500,000 to the ransomware group to unencrypt their data and take the leaked data off the NetWalker leak site. Almost all of the universities listed above have paid similar sums in ransom, and it was estimated in a recent McAfee report that the NetWalker group had made over $25 million in ransom payments since launching the leak site, which was only 2 months ago. Lastly, just to kind of piece this case study together, I just wanted to show you how you can discover a persona that is behind a ransomware group. So we know NetWalker, and this is on XSS Forum, which is another Russian, it was earlier, I talked about it earlier, but it's a Russian-speaking underground forum. As you can see in the screenshot, the NetWalker ransomware developer and spokesperson goes by the persona Bugatti. And you can find other kind of useful information in posts and in their thread where they're advertising the ransomware. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn things back over to Andrew.
Awesome. Sounds good. I know we are running low on time, so Sean's going to set up the demo real quick. While he does that, I'm just going to go over some organizations that do this type of work. There's a lot of them, but just some key points. CrowdStrike and FireEye have been around for a very long time, and CrowdStrike specifically publishes the most white papers on historical APT and nation state attacks. So they've just got a very long background of things you can pull from. Digital Shadows, probably one of the best weekly podcasts on just the dark web. It's really, really interesting to listen to, and they've got their analysts and collectors out there doing a lot of hard work, so you can just get the wave cap notes. Really interesting, really awesome. Also, going without saying, dark web starter guides, we will have all of the research and all the links and step-by-step guides for you to do this kind of work on your own. We'll get that passed off to David as soon as we're out of here. But now I'm going to pass it back over to Sean, who's going to go through the demo.
All right. So what we're looking at here, since we ended on NetWalker, I wanted to just show you in real time what the NetWalker ransomware leak site looks like. So essentially they breach one of these victims, they steal their data, and then they advertise the data as sort of a shaming method, saying, these organizations don't care about their data and their clients' data and anything else that they're able to steal by just posting it on here publicly for anybody to download. And they use this method of counting down to sort of put pressure on the victim who was compromised to pay up before the data becomes public. And I'll just scroll down real quick to show you one example, since we're, Austin College. So you can see samples of the data that's included in the database that was publicly leaked. All you have to do is click on this link right here and enter in the password, and you can download all of Austin College's database, or all of Austin College in Dallas, all of their files and personal information, likely student, and there's probably HR information as well.
Are those samples or the entire database?
That's the entire database. Now, Revil.
Are you on it, man? You need to download everything.
I'm not going to download someone's database on a recorded video.
I was talking to you, Bob.
Oh.
Yeah, we asked Marie to download it.
Yeah, Marie will download it. Yeah.
All right. So this is the Revil ransomware data leak site, which is another one that I had mentioned earlier. The persona in XSS and exploit Russian forums, as well as Maza, goes by the name or the pseudonym unknown. There's also some ties to the infamous GanCrab ransomware. There's been many claims that the Revil ransomware developers, the same one that developed GanCrab. So just as you can see, there's many pages of organizations whose data has been leaked. I did want to show you, because Revil ransomware is the only ransomware group that has this feature in their leak site. They have a auction style or auction format section built into their website. And as you'll notice, there's some pretty popular names of like musicians and movie stars and things like that. This is Universal Studios, MTV, all the Bad Boy Entertainment, LeBron James, Mariah Carey, Nicki Minaj's data. This all came from a law firm, this one right here, that was breached earlier this year. That's where the Donald Trump data came from too. I just want to show you just a real quick search engine. So let's say we want to look for, we'll say wiki. All right, so let's just click on this one, since I know exactly what this is. This is the under directory, which is one that was featured in an earlier slide. Let's see if it'll let me do this. Okay, cool. So this directory, and you got to be cautious with some of these sites, especially if, you know, adult or anything like that, but we'll just click on hosting. So ZeroBin is a paste site that I know a lot of threat actors use. So of course, that one's not going to go. And as you know, a lot of these different sites will change Tor URLs pretty often. I think this one's going to work though. Yep. So this is actually the hosting site that, or the bulletproof hosting site that I listed in one of the slides. The most famous bulletproof hosting, or the most popular bulletproof hosting before, was Daniels Hosting, which actually recently doesn't exist anymore because law enforcement figured out who owned it. So yeah, you get the idea. So you can pivot off of a lot of this information. So you can use wikis or directories to, you know, say like, I want to look into different underground gambling sites. You know, here's some Russian ones. I've heard of that one. All right, now to go into wikis, you've got Intel Repository, which is, you know, really good for staying up to date with like anytime that there's, say, like a government breach, typically not US, but actually let me retract that, because they do have some US confidential government databases in here. Oh, City of Milton Police is.
So these are data from.
Correct. Yep. Venezuela papers, Colombian government leaks, U.S. intelligence contractors database. So you can literally take, you know, these zip files or these links, and I mean, you never want to just click on a link. Let me you want to take it and you want to run it through VirusTotal before you do anything else.
Yeah.
And then even when you download the file and say VirusTotal says it's okay, you want to put that file in VirusTotal again and run it, and just to be sure. These are not, you know, the kindest of places. These are all databases. So just real quick, so pivoting off of this section, you see a list of a whole bunch of really useful sites. Like, for example, these are all ransomware leak sites. So there's Clops, there's Maze hacking, or Maze ransomware, their leak site. Here's Nephilim's corporate leak site. I don't know why they have it listed on there twice. Actually, this is DNPS. So that's actually Doppelpaymer. So they have that listed wrong. You know, just all kinds of useful information. NIMT is actually a ransomware that doesn't exist anymore, and they took their site offline about 3 months ago. And then Nephilim, which is run by the same persona who runs NIMT, or who created NIMT, who goes by JS Worm in Russian forums, launched the Nephilim site. Underground Stock Insiders, it actually costs to get in that one. If you lurk at all, or you know, approach anyone the wrong way, you're going to get banned. I did want to touch on raid forums. I don't have to log in.
Sean, I just want to make sure that we open the floor for questions, right?
Yeah.
And leave enough time for this.
Yep. This is the last thing.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of paint a picture to show you, and this is just one forum, okay? They have almost 9 billion records from a collection of 441 databases that you can download right here, as easy as just clicking on it and then downloading it. The form does run on a credit system, but I mean, you're talking about like $1 or 40 cents to download these. So you see like Ohio voter database, Oklahoma voter database, Pennsylvania, if we scroll down and look at this long enough, you'll start noticing, oh, wow, I actually have an account with that. Here's a Kickstarter database. I know ProctorU was breached recently, and that database is on here. Here's a Georgia 2018 voter database. So, plenty of databases to download, and typically how they're used is like password. So they'll password crack the database, and then databases that have been, and then passwords that have been reused can then be used to brute force different accounts. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And these are just the verified databases. There's even more databases that are for sale and leaked on this, like every minute. There's constantly activity and databases being leaked on here. But that's pretty much it. I will stop sharing my screen now.
This was really good. I mean, I really enjoyed it. And so usually we sit through academians talk and they're fun, and we give these talks as well. But it's very rarely that we actually learn something new about the dark net and the operation. So at least on my book, we were exposed to many websites, many forums on which we definitely need to develop some presence on. So with that in mind, let's open the floor for questions. Any questions, you guys?
I have a few.
Let's start with one, Dara.
Okay. So the first question would be, it was very interesting to see how you described the strategies to engage with the bad actors on the forums and where you can talk to them. However, my specialty is Telegram, and I try talking to people, and what happens is in a public group where everybody can see everybody, they already have an existing hierarchy of things, like there are admins or there are people who have a lot of say, and there are people. So how do I fit in? Like, what are some strategies specifically for that so that I can fit in and get the information that I need very quickly? Again, like, my objective won't be that I will be trailing them for a longer time. I just want to know something very quickly. What is it called? And what are some keywords I can look up?
Well, so if you're trying to engage with a specific threat actor on that channel, but you don't want to post anything in the message publicly because everyone in the channel will be able to see it, well, the first thing that I would do is I would look at the username that the one that you're actually targeting, the one that you're looking for, and I would run that username through different OSINT tools like Namecheck or username check. Spiderfoot is another really good tool, and it'll show you all the different social media accounts and anything else that's on the internet that uses that username, so that you can kind of go in and start pivoting off of each of those different accounts on each of those different sites to see if any of those accounts kind of match as far as like the activity that you see with the one that you're trying to communicate with on Telegram. Because if you're in a public channel and your goal is to talk to them privately, you want to figure out, okay, how can I move out of this channel? And if you don't want to say anything publicly in the channel, then you're going to have to do research and see where else that threat actor has accounts. So if you have access to all these forums and marketplaces, see if they use that same username in those forums and marketplaces. And the same thing with Twitter and social media and all that.
Also, real quick, just to add, not really an established technique, but it's kind of a swaggy way to do it. So let's say you're in a public channel and you've got 10 people talking. You find whoever the lowest person is on the totem pole, call them out, make them look stupid, build your credibility with the person you're going after, and then just kind of work your way in that way. So you essentially find the weakest dog in the pack, attack them, and by doing that, you push them out of the way and develop your bona fides.
Just be
Thank you.
careful and
Yes.
have a very well thought out plan if that's what you're going to do.
Okay.
Thank you there. Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a question. So harkening back to OPSEC, I know with the virtual machines, would Tails be sufficient?
So Tails, and I'll say something, and you can say something, Andrew. But Tails is good. You know, I like Cubes better if you've heard of Cubes. So you can download Cubes, and I think you can only download Cubes through Tor. And it's another operating system, and you can run it on a thumb drive or a little flash drive and only use it. And it's as simple as like if that virtual machine in that operating system on your thumb drive gets burned, you just take it out, wipe it, or throw it away. You know.
Yeah, I think that's you can also do that with Tails, but I'll definitely check out.
Well, I mean, it's user preference. You know,
Yeah.
I don't have anything bad to say about Tails. I don't have anything bad to say about Cubes. They both do the exact same thing.
Cool.
There was some website that you see in which requires some senior member, you know, need to maintain the membership. You want to see some secret messages, maybe. You know, some platform like that.
You said
Like paid member or invited member.
There's tons. Yeah, Exploit was one that we mentioned. XSS is one that we mentioned. Not only so you either can get vouched into Exploit, or you have to pay. I think it's like $100 or $150. Maza, which is like top tier Russian forum, costs $2,000 to get in. And then with Exploit, to get to the next tier level, which is the first level access, you have to, I can't remember, you pay something else for that. But I mean, I've got
accounts. Do you have accounts? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you show us some?
There's so for Maza, I know that Recorded Future, Cyber 6 Gil, I think Dark Owl all scrape Maza and the first tier level of Exploit. So those are all dark web search engine, or not dark web search engines, but they're dark web software as a service tools that can also set up alerting. So if you have specific keywords, let's just use the example, Georgia State University. We want to find any hits on GSU, any hits on Georgia State, any hits on Georgia State University, blah, 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 blah. And you'll get automated alerting, and then you just kind of go through and find what the false positives were, and then find things that are actually a threat.
Talk to me a little bit about, and I posted this on one of the channels, the Slack channels. We're all, I mean, we're both, and maybe Andrew as well is a member of. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between some of the website defacement websites that you were talking about, and you know, the progression of those hackers throughout sort of the you know, the ecosystem, and how they become more and more sophisticated? If you have evidence about this, I mean, if you know of people who started doing this and then became those really sophisticated hackers.
Yeah, here, let me actually send you this or drop this in Zoom real quick, because it's a prime example. There was I think they're Iranian or Saudi, I can't remember. I think they're Iranian. Yeah, it was an Iranian hacking group, or it was an APT group, and this one member was identified and doxxed as being part of that Iranian APT group, and that Iranian APT group was responsible for hacking. God, what was it? Aramco back in the day, which was the Saudi energy oil company. But I'm trying to remember. His name is Satanic 2000, and the Andrew, do you know what I'm talking about? 2000. I just want to drop it.
Yeah, I remember. This is the guy who got recruited up out of there, and that
Yes.
was the start.
Well, so the interesting thing is, and I can't remember which defacement site it was on. It might have been just Zone H, but you'll notice that, yeah, here's a good link right here. I'll drop in.
It'll be extremely useful, Sean, if you have that, if you have the screenshot, right, with the guys.
So there is a link that explains a little bit about the story behind this. Oh, here we go. Satanic 2000 on Zone H. So this threat actor is, and I just dropped the link in there, according to the Lab Dukatin, I can't pronounce it, they claim that Satanic 2000 was a former Iranian APT member, and that specific group that they talked about was responsible for the cyber attack on Aramco in Saudi Arabia. So now what's interesting is if you go on their Zone H profile, you'll notice a gap. I can't remember the years, but it's like from 2013 to like 2016, there's nothing. And then like 2016, it picks back up. And like all of the targets, all of the defacements from 2013 were like all Saudi Arabia. And then like all of the most recent ones were like all Israel. So it's obvious that, they have some kind of influence, or Iran has some kind of influence in the attacks that are going on related to that threat actor. So, just at the top of my head, that's the best example that I can think of. But I want to caveat that with most of the activity that happens in defacement sites is lower level cyber criminal,
Sure.
And in some cases hacktivists. So like if there's a hacktivist group that has the same kind of the same kind of mindset as PETA, right? And then a company like Canada Goose or something, animal related that sells fur coats or, goose feather jackets or whatever. Then a group that has that kind of PETA mindset would, run campaigns to try and deface those company websites, and then they'll post it on Zone H, sort of bragging about it. But most of it is just low-level script kiddie stuff.
Yeah. All right, we want to be respectful for everyone's time, and it's 4:30. So we want to thank our speakers. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Sean, so much. I've learned a lot. I appreciate you taking the time talking to us. Anyone who wants to, ask questions, Sean is part of the team, right? He's officially part of the team. He's on the website. I'm not sure whether you have an email address with us, Sean, or not.
Not yet.
But if anyone wants to ask Sean a question, let me know and I will forward your question to him. Same thing with Andrew. So thank you guys so much again. Thank you all for attending this important seminar, and enjoy the weekend.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody.